Land and Freedom is a semi-cooperative game about the Spanish Civil War. Up to 3 players will take control of the moderates, the communists, and the anarchists in this fragile and uncomfortable coalition that, sure, wants to defeat the fascists, but also each of them want to take control of the government, or in any case, to be the predominant party at the end of the game. You're gonna play 3 rounds, each with 4 turns. The fascists will win if they take control of Madrid, or if they win on 2 fronts. If the players manage to survive until the end of the game, then whoever has the most influence in the country wins the game, and everybody else loses the game. So that's one of the tricky things with semi-cooperative games, of course, that you work together, but not for the greater good, ultimately for your own only. This is the board of the game, which is printed on what appears to be like a plasticky kind of mat. We have the very abstract but functional, it shows what it needs to show, representation of Spain with 4 fronts. And again, those are the fronts that we are fighting to possibly control, at least not to lose. And again, if we lose Madrid, it's over. If we lose any 2 fronts, it's over. Now, you see these tokens here. These represent fascist powers. Think of them, each of them as -1. As you can see there, that's -1 to a front. Any action that will place more fascist tokens there, again, that's a -1. So right now, Southern Front is at -4. Actions that will allow us to place our own tokens are to be thought of as +1. So if now a player was to add +2 to Southern, well, -4 plus 2 is -2. And now say we got +4 more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, now we're at +2. That is how that works. If a front ever goes down to -10 or lower, it's lost, and we place a card there to cover it, and it can never be recovered for the rest of the game. You can pause or read the effects of defeat on a front if you want. If we get to +10, however, that's pretty good, because then we got victory on a front, and once we have a victory again, that cannot be changed for the rest of the game. But remember, war being the pursuit of political objectives through violence, well, we need to take care of the political dimension. And so we have here several tracks that will do precisely that. So we have liberty, collectivization, which are very important, especially for the anarchist factions. And each track has several symbols. When these tokens are moved by game effects, the first time they go on one of these symbols, you trigger the effect. For example, if collectivization goes down, then foreign aid goes up, because, you know, the Americans and the Brits and the French are like, yeah, let's invest there. They're not collectivizing too much. But after you resolve the effect, you place a token there so it doesn't trigger again, unless there is a game effect that removes the blank token. Then we have the government, then we have Soviet support and foreign aid. Now, super important concept is who has initiative, which is basically the player who has the most influence in the country. It might be that it's the moderates or the communists who are working within the government. So, if the government token is on this side of that line, then the moderates have control and they have the initiative. If it's on this side, then the communists have control of the government. However, if liberty and collectivization are at least at 6, then it doesn't matter who is controlling the government, because the people don't care about the government, and the anarchists have control of the whole enchilada, and they have the initiative token. The initiative player goes first, and most importantly, the initiative player breaks every single darn time in the game, including tiebreaker for victory at the end of the game. That's how important it is. So that's for that, super important. Also, there are interesting restrictions here. For example, the government stays close to the center. You can get it to be super communist or super moderate, whatever that means, kind of like a paradox, kind of oxymoronic. I'm extremely moderate. You cannot get it past those two thresholds unless you have 8 or more in foreign aid for extreme moderation, or 8 or more in Soviet support to get really, really communist. And so for most of the game, they will be close to the center, which of course is what makes that exciting for communists and moderates. So that's the general idea. Each turn starts with a card being drawn from the fastest deck or the year deck, but that mainly represents the bad stuff that they are doing. Okay, now there are other things also. Let's call it the event deck. You'll draw a card, resolve those effects, then the players take their actions. Next turn you draw another card, and so on and so forth until the end of the first round, which is the first year. And then you have a deck of events for year 2 and a deck of events for year 3 at the end of the third year, 12 round. 12 turn, if the players are still in the game, then you determine who the winner is. Now, when you reveal an event, the first thing that you do is you resolve these events top to bottom. The fastest will place tokens. For example, this event will place 4 tokens in the southern front, which I showed you earlier, in the southern front. And the event will place 1 fastest token in Aragon, or Aragorn, as we from time to time say, because elves in the Spanish Civil War, why not? And this event says the Soviet support goes down by 2 levels, sorry communist. But as you can see, what's bad for one player may be good for other players. Anarchists are like, okay. Moderates are like, that's fine, I guess. Now, the fastest also launch a challenge with each card. There's a condition that will be checked at the end of the turn. If, for example, the southern front, by the end of the turn, is a -1 or better, then the communists get to draw a card. If it's a -2 or worse, then collectivization goes down by 2. And sometimes, again, these conditions are bad only for somebody. So you're going to see some players maybe not committing too much to passing the test. Other things can be pretty bad, actually. So there are just all sorts of effects that will be triggered by that. Another concept is the bonuses. The bonuses are important. They are on at the beginning of the game. Game effects may also turn them off, but they're extremely valuable, so in most cases players will want those to be on. And again, you can use game effects to switch them back up if some negative back effects turn them off. So, for example, the morale bonus is super important. We'll see what that means because it allows players to perform extra actions. The teamwork bonus is also very important because when it allows you to place extra forces on the board. The general idea is super simple. Players will have a hand of cards, and each turn you're going to discuss and debate with the other players. So here I have the moderate deck. Each turn you discuss and debate what you want to do. Then each player will select a card secretly, and then everybody reveals it at the same time. So the kind of deals that you made may or may not correspond to the card that you play. After everybody plays the card, in initiative order, players will resolve their events. You can choose this section of the card, or you can choose the events that are represented here. These are usually very powerful, but once you do it, once you resolve this thing, the card is out of the game. As opposed to if you select this section here, the card stays in front of you, and it may form a tableau. And so, for example, I selected this one for those actions, then next time I select this one, and then next time I select this one. I wanted a better one for what I'm trying to say. There you go, and we'll see what that means. Suppose that now I played this one. So what happens if you select this section? First, you have a number here, which is the number of actions that you get. That number allows you to interact with the space on the board. I can move a track by one with a1. I can flip that many off tokens back to on if they are indeed on their off side, or I can interact with the front. Say, for example, I decide to spend one, so I'm interacting by one in Saturn that way. I also place my token there to indicate that I acted there, because there may be rewards for doing that. Also, if the teamwork bonus is up, say another player is going there, they get to add an extra, and they play a 1, they get to remove an extra enemy token or place an extra friendly side if already somebody was there. So that's the value of teamwork. You're kind of creating an avalanche effect in the front. How about the tableau? After I resolve that one, I can choose one of the icons on the card that I just played. And I perform that action as many times as I have icons of that type showing on my tableau. So if I was to use this one at the beginning of the turn, I use that action and then I add a friendly token somewhere. But if I'm doing the same action later in the turn, now activating that icon allows me to add 3 friendly tokens or to move support twice. So you see the advantage. If I take the big reward here, I'm not building my tableau, but if I am building my tableau, the third or the fourth action in a round can be pretty powerful. So that's the idea. Actions will allow us to alter the situation on the board with more, hopefully with more of our forces and fewer fastest forces on the board. We are manipulating those tracks to trigger different effects. Also, our actions will allow us to collect hero points which are a currency that can be spent to perform extra things, such as drawing extra cards or moving markers on the track. The cost is indicated there. To move 4 and 8 by 1 in either direction I want, it would cost me 2 hero points. So I will support 2 hero points. The government is tough. You need 4 hero points. To flip, again, an off bonus, get it back up to the on side is 2 hero points. So these are some of the main concepts, main ideas. Reveal an event card each turn, play a card, resolve the effects, possibly you spamming your engine. And then remember, don't forget, check the trigger at the challenge at the end of the turn, possibly collect and or spend hero points, and this is how you play Land and Freedom. But wait, I forgot to tell you about victory conditions. Those are kind of important. At the end of each turn, the player who has initiative gets to place one of their faction tokens in a draw bag. And at the end of each year, a number of them is drawn, and that number increases over time. And at the beginning of year 3, there's a special phase in which there is a bid for resources in which you may get to place an extra token on the board. So you're gonna try to have initiative for as much as possible to place those tokens in the draw bag, and at the end of the game, if the players haven't lost the war to the fastest, then whoever has the most tokens on the board, so as drawn from the draw bag, wins the game. Now, as I read the rules, I thought that was gonna maybe be too much luck in there, but I actually came to love that mechanic. It's extremely smart because it prevents what otherwise may be king making, or I should say doom making. If you're thinking that you're gonna lose the game anyways, then you just burn it all to the ground, do your best to let the fastest win, and that just doesn't feel right, historically speaking, and also game-wise. But with this idea, well, I know that I placed maybe fewer tokens in there than my opponent, but I still have a chance. So it turns out to me a very clever mechanic, because you still want to do as best as you can. Objectively, if you place more tokens in the draw bag, you're going to have better chances of winning. But there's a chance for players behind to win also, and so again, that prevents doom making. If that bothers you, well, now you know how the game is, and that may be a deal breaker for some of you. But most people who engage with historical war games are okay with fairly high levels of randomness, because that captures the imponderabilities of war, that captures fog of war, that captures the fact that war is such a mysterious and complex event. The closest thing the war resembles to, according to Clausewitz, is a game of cards. So, booyah, card-driven games, and I guess also bag building games. So there's that, which I like very much, that mechanic. But in general, I like the game a lot. Now, it comes with bots, so you can play it solo, or if you have only 2 players, you can automatize one of the sites. But I played with 3 players, and I like it so much the way. And what I like precisely is the diplomacy, is the coalition making, and the double dealing, and the double talk, and the backstabbing. But then sometimes we really are best friends until we're not. The human element is so much in relief as you play it with other players. This is so much a diplomatic and military game that I don't think I want to play it against the bots. There are the games that I can play solo, but this one is really fun because of the human element. And how swingy things are, but in a good way, because if a player really goes far on one track, the anarchists take really strong control of the situation, or the communists or the government, is because the other two haven't done their job well. Usually the situation will easily swing one side or the other. 2 parties should always work together to prevent another one from getting too far. And it's really well balanced that way, how the government is usually close to switching sides and close to lose all impact on the country anyways. Really fun. The fact that the fascist attacks become stronger over time and become more threatening, which coincides with when players are like, okay, now I like to switch to my political objectives, but the fascists are attacking now more powerfully. The fact that at least one front is likely to collapse most of the time, again creates a nice sense of tension, which is remarkable around the game engine, which is so simple, where the military events are entirely resolved by a differential of positive and negative numbers. So simple and yet so effective. And historically speaking, there is a lot of flavor text on these cards that really connects those numerical changes with people and money and power and technology and feelings and emotions. There are facts there that I read from those cards I didn't know before, and those are fascinating, because ultimately one reasons why we play historical war games is because we want to learn about history in a way that is engaging, that is deep, that is dynamic. And this game does that very well. Again, the fact that to me it takes exactly 3 players to play. Maybe a limitation, maybe I won't play quite as often, but if you're okay with the bots, we just seen those other elements, seeing the challenge, the numerical challenges, seeing the history, then you can play it solo. But where this game really shines to me is when you have the complexity of this diplomatic situation. So you have a game engine which is really smooth, really smart, does not overstay its welcome, gives you a sense of history through gameplay, which is fun and exciting. What else can you ask for from a war game?